The Mavericks look to bounce back tonight as they take on the New Orleans Pelicans on the second night of a back-to-back. We'll preview tonight's game coming up next here on the DLLS Mavs pregame show. Here we go. Hey, what's up, DLLS Mavs Nation? It's your man, Kevin Gray, alongside Mavericks beat writer Tim Cato, Mavericks analyst Bobby Carella. We are DLLS Mavs, your favorite guys, coming your favorite team every single game night at Kevin Gray Sports, at Tim_Cato, at Bobby Carella. If you want to get at us on X, you can always dial up the Stein line for our national NBA insider, Mark Stein, at the Stein line. We have reached the halfway point of the NBA season for your Dallas Mavericks as they play game number 41 tonight. They're on the second night of a back-to-back as they take on the New Orleans Pelicans in the Big Easy. We really appreciate you joining us here on DLLS Sports. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe while you're here as well. And you can find our podcast wherever you get your podcast for free. We'll get you ready for tonight's game over the course of the next half hour with who you need to know in terms of X factors, who's in, who's out, and also as we get Bobby's scouting report as well. But, gentlemen, let's just jump into it on this wonderful Wednesday night. Gentlemen, how we feeling tonight?
Feeling good. Goodish.
Good-ish?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Ready to meet my fate head on.
Well, hopefully it's a good one after the next 3 hours tonight, as we are not only halfway through the NBA season for your Dallas Mavericks, we're halfway through the month of January. It's January 15th as well. So looking forward to tonight's action. Game time at 7 o'clock tonight. If you're going to be watching the game, you can watch it on KFAA Channel 29. Mavericks, of course, coming in tonight at 22-18, 10-10 away from the American Airlines Center. Pelicans worst in the West at 9-32. They're 5-16 so far at home this year, but they are at a 1.5 favorite tonight at home with the over-under at 221.5. Essentially a toss-up tonight between these two teams. Let's look at where both of these teams are coming into tonight's game. We start, of course, with your Dallas Mavericks, 6th in the West tonight, just a half game ahead of the Los Angeles Lakers, who are in the 7th spot coming into tonight's game. Mavericks, of course, unfortunately on a 2-game losing streak after losing both games of their mini-series against the Denver Nuggets. Of course, last night, the Mavericks have now lost 7 of their last 10 games. 2-2, they went on their recent homestand with wins over the Blazers and the Lakers before those 2 losses to the Denver Nuggets. Interesting enough, tonight, though, the Mavericks begin a stretch of the next 6 straight games. They alternate home and road games. They'll be back at home on Friday when they take on Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and the Oklahoma City Thunder. They'll be in New Orleans tonight and then be back home on Friday. Of course, the Mavericks on the second night of a back-to-back tonight after taking on Denver last night. The Mavericks so far this year, 11-5 against teams below 500, and that's exactly where, of course, the Pelicans are, as they are dead last in the Western Conference, 2.5 games behind the Utah Jazz for 14th in the West. They are 4-3, though, in their last 7 games, playing a little bit better as of late after losing their previous 11 straight games. They just finished up a 3-game road trip themselves, going 2-1 on that road trip with a win last night over the Chicago Bulls. So the Pelicans themselves on a second night of a back-to-back, but they are at home tonight, of course, to take on the Mavericks. They'll begin a 4-game homestand tonight, will the Pelicans, with Dallas so far this year, 2-24 against teams above 500. That gives you a picture of both of these teams coming into tonight's game. As we go to Bobby Carella for his scouting report tonight, unfortunately, no Dereck Lively II. He sprained his ankle 4 minutes into the game last night against the Denver Nuggets after stepping on Nikola Jokic's foot. How will the Mavericks defend tonight? Guys like Trey Murphy, CJ McCollum, and others without the services of one Dereck Lively II tonight.
It means the Mavs are going to play a lot more drop in the pick and roll. You know, whenever it's Lively out there, he'll play closer to the level of the screen. Sometimes he'll just outright switch onto guys. But as soon as he left the game last night, the Mavs reverted to playing a much more kind of conservative drop-style defense. Part of that is to protect Kyrie. Part of that is because they don't want to switch guards onto Jokic, which completely understandable. But Jamal Murray really exploited that, kind of stepping into these 18, 20-footers and floaters and stuff over and over and over again. And the Pelicans have a pair of guards in their starting lineup that when they're at their best can do that same kind of thing. DeJounte Murray and CJ McCollum, both throughout their career, excellent 3-level scorers, excellent pull-up jump shooters. This year, though, Murray is shooting a horrifying 22.9% on mid-range shots, and
I'm sorry, what?
22.9 American percentile points.
23%.
Wow.
Yes.
On every shot in the mid-range?
Career 45%. Last year, 51% on mid-range shots, but this year, 23%. CJ McCollum this year, 41%, which is 3 percentage points below his career average. Now, that's all good and well, but if all of these shots are going to be very cozy, find your rhythm, step off, come around the corner of this screen and just be able to set your feet, get everything right, they become a lot easier. Gafford doesn't necessarily have the foot speed to step out. Maxi Kleber at this point in his career doesn't really have the foot speed to step all the way out. Dwight Powell, I think, does. But what happens whenever your big steps out the way that Dwight does is he'll kind of step out and pursue and hope to peel back off of the ball handler back to his man. But whether it's Yves Missi or whoever else the Pelicans, I mean, maybe JRE, small ball 5, or Daniel Tice if he gets in there, whatever. I don't necessarily want Mavs guards switching onto them. I'm much more willing to do that than, say, switch off on Nikola freaking Jokic. So maybe the Mavs will get a little experimental, but if they are going to play a lot of drop tonight, be ready to see McCollum and DeJounte Murray look to shoot coming around the corner. And if those guys get going, it just makes it really uncomfortable because then you do want to step out. Or you might need to double. Then all of a sudden, Trey Murphy's open for 3, and we're having a really, really bad time. So I want to exercise a little bit of caution. This season, whenever Gafford does drop, by the way, the Mavs allow 1.009 points per chance, which isn't that bad. But opponents in those situations have a 56.2 effective field goal percentage. That is pretty bad. The reason that the points per chance is lower than the EFG would make you think is because the Mavs do force some turnovers. When you play drop and you are playing the gaps, coming in around the elbow, around the nail, sending help, you're allowing skip passes, which lets you gamble, lets you take some chances, jump some passing lanes. So maybe that can be a factor. McCollum and Murray aren't great passers, but at any rate, get well soon, Dereck Lively, because it just simplifies a lot of the things the Mavs can do on defense.
Did you pull from the mid-range stat? Did you pull from cleaning the glass?
No, basketballreference.gov.
So those are the long mid-range.
Well, 16 to 3.
16 to 3.
Yeah.
That does mean if he's, and historically, I mean, he's a career 45%
16
guy.
feet, so basically outside the paint.
Right. You still don't want DeJounte Murray coming in and settling into a shot like on the elbow. You don't want him doing that. If you can keep him out by a few steps, that's a different thing. If he's shooting, 19, 18 feet, elbow extended, you don't want him touching the paint and then rising up for that easy look, because he does shoot 45% there, which is below where he was last year and a little bit below his career mark. But I think that's exactly what you're saying. You don't want him to slide into those comfortable zones because it's not as comfortable if you're not touching the paint. That's the shot that Dallas needs to get him shooting, not the ones where he is settling into a shot, especially with that like 1-2 dribble rhythm that really allows guards to turn not just make it a mid-ranger, but to make it into a shot they practice constantly.
Let's get to our lead story for the Mavericks tonight, as they're going to be dealing with some injuries on their side of things. We see it in the chat as well. I see Ronald, I see Soren, I see Luke in there. Really appreciate all of you joining us here on the DLLS Mavs pregame show. Injuries, unfortunately, though, continuing to take their toll on the Dallas Mavericks. Kyrie Irving, who, of course, returned last night after missing the previous 4 games with the back injury. He's going to be out once again tonight with that same back injury. And the aforementioned Dereck Lively II, he's out tonight with that sprained right ankle. So that means that the depth of the Mavericks will be tested once again tonight to try to provide some stability as they take on the New Orleans Pelicans. Kyrie Irving speaking last night after the game about the kind of managing that he's going to have to do with this back injury going forward from here as he tries to help this team on the floor when he can. Here's what he had to say.
When you say you have to be smart about it, how much is there a concern, or how much do you just have to be vigilant, and this is going to be somewhat of an ongoing thing?
Yeah, it's my body, bro. It's you know how it is, man. It's how I make my. It's how I take care of my family. So anything that goes on with the back or knees, feet, you got to be very cautious. So just talking with the medical staff, doing everything that we can to make sure we have a plan and just go from there. But it's not really like a heavy concern in the locker room or with coaching staff or with our medical staff.
And Jason Kidd did say prior to tonight's game that Kyrie did go through an extensive workout prior to tonight's game with hopes to be ready to play on Friday when they return home to take on the Oklahoma City Thunder. Tim Cato, obviously this team has been dealing with injuries throughout the course of the season, and they'll have to try to do it again tonight on the second night of a back-to-back against the Pelicans.
Yeah, I mean, I think a big question is why Kyrie played last night and not tonight, and we can get into that a little bit. Well, I think now is as good a time as any. And, but he said last night that he planned to play. So I do think that sometimes the organization has to, really step into these situations. But I think for Kyrie, for his, his calculations was, I feel ready. I feel like I've been back on the court and it's time to get out there. And for him, especially because it's back, especially because it's something he hasn't really dealt with before, there's a hurdle or a mental block to get past and just to get back on the court. That said, I'm really finding it hard to not see why the organization wasn't more pragmatic about this. Because, you saw last night.
You struggled.
They got smoked. And, if Kyrie coming back really changed the mentality of the team that much, I just think it's different if you're playing a team like the Pelicans. So
I always think just physically, if maybe they knew, maybe they didn't know. I don't know. I don't really care. That's not going to deter me from making my point. All right. If they even thought that he wasn't going to play tonight, would it make sense to bring in the guy with fresh legs on the second night whenever everyone else is tired? Because first, you're playing everybody, and now you're playing one fewer guy. So all the guys that are playing are even more tired than they would be. Mm-hmm. Wouldn't the spiritual lift accompanying the physical lift also be the better way to go?
Yeah.
Against a worse team that you probably would beat even if Kyrie has a bad game? I don't know, man. I'm not one to second guess anybody because I don't know anything about, first off, physiology, anatomy, backs, health, any of that stuff. So speculation is just it's a fool's errand. But still, I feel like I'm right.
On the flip side, I guess if you're going to play devil's advocate and you're going to look back, in the rearview mirror now that the game has happened, Kyrie came back and wasn't very good.
Yeah, 4 of 18 for just 11 points in the 30 minutes that he played.
It's not like Denver has been a stifling defense this season.
Sure.
And on top of that, Jason Kidd's main point last night was the team kind of let off because Kyrie was back, expecting him to carry. I still think the process makes way more sense, but if you just plug in both Kyrie, like the literal performance Kyrie had last night, as well as the role players, needing a little time to adjust and, deferring too much to Kyrie, I guess that's a pretty bad recipe too. So if we're going to play this game, that's the devil's advocate. I still fully think the process makes more sense for Kyrie to be the guy in there, tonight, not last night. But I guess that's the other argument. And now that Kyrie does feel comfortable and maybe you get a boost because he did play last night. And now, the role players understand that, this isn't going to be up to them in perpetuity. They have proof. That said, it's really tough. I mean, do we know when they landed in New Orleans?
Well, I mean, you talked to Kyrie right before our third segment, so that would have been 11:45.
Yeah, getting close to midnight. Yeah,
and they weren't even at the airport. So if the plane took off by 12:30, that's a miracle. If I had to guess, they didn't even land in New Orleans till 2 a.m.
I'd say so, yeah.
And in New Orleans, the bus ride from the airport, they actually take a police escort, so it goes by a little quicker. But the bus ride from the airport to the hotel is about 20-25 minutes, and it takes 5-10 minutes to load the buses. So you're looking at a 2:30 to 3 a.m. arrival at the hotel.
Yeah.
It's bad. That's bad living.
Yeah. I mean, if NBA players are anything like me, I mean, they're probably not asleep until 4 a.m., 3:45.
Mavericks and
And
Pelicans.
you're probably not anything like me, for the record. So
it does take a little time to decompress a little bit.
If
Yeah.
is very, very.
Yeah,
It's doing great.
And it might take
killing
another
it.
45 on top
It takes
of
a little
that.
time to decompress once you get off the plane. I understand where you're going with the plane. Mavericks and Pelicans are playing each other for the second time this season. They previously met back on November 19th at the AAC. Of course, in what was a 132-91 blowout by the Mavericks over the Pelicans that night. Luka Doncic, who had returned from an injury that night himself, actually had 26 points in the win. Klay Thompson at 19. Kyrie had 18. The two teams will play each other exactly 2 weeks from today back in New Orleans, Bobby, the favorite bit of the Mavericks this year, spending all the time on the road. So they'll see the Pelicans in 2 weeks' time in the Big Easy. More on who's in, who's out, and our X Factors, plus our Mavericks player spotlight as well here on the DLLS Mavs podcast. But before we get there, let's talk to you a little bit about Sleeper.
I'm trying to stop the skid, man. I feel like I'm the Mavs right now. I've dropped 3 or 4 straight now on Sleeper. I think 3 straight. But let's get back to basics tonight. No more bits. I'm getting serious. Daniel Gafford, I'm going more than 21.5 points plus rebounds. I feel like he's going to get a ton of minutes tonight, and he does have the size advantage over Yves Missi, so I think he's going to have a pretty good game. DeJounte Murray, I'm going to go less than 1 double-double for DeJounte Murray. I think he's going to come away with at least, I would say at most, half of a double-double. But I don't believe that he will get a full double-double. And then PJ Washington, I thought long and hard about this one. I was like, man, I feel like PJ is probably going to take 5 or 6 threes today. So maybe he'll make more than one. But I wanted to, again, we're getting back to basics here. I'm trying to stop the losing streak. So I'm taking PJ Washington to make 1 3-pointer. If that $5 pick converts into a big fat dub for your boy, the max payout will be $12. It will be a times 2.4 multiplier on Sleeper. The more you play, the more you win, multiplying your chances or multiplying your winnings. God, I make it seem very tough. All the way up to times 100. Promo code DLLS Mavs. You play $5, get $55 free. See if you know ball better than I do, because, ladies and gentlemen, the threshold is lowering.
Make sure you check out Sleeper today. Let's get to our injury report on tonight's game as the Mavericks take on the New Orleans Pelicans. Game time at 7 p.m. Again, if you're watching the game locally, you can watch it on KFAA Channel 29. Pelicans will not have Zion Williamson tonight. He's sitting out the second night of the back-to-back due to a return to competition conditioning is the official designation. So he will be out for tonight's game. DeJounte Murray, he is available. He's dealing with some elbow bursitis. Brandon Ingram, he's out with a left ankle sprain. Herb Jones, the Pelicans' best defensive player, he is out with a right shoulder strain. For the Mavericks, of course, Luka Doncic remains out with the calf strain. Dereck Lively II out with the right ankle sprain. Kyrie Irving out with the back injury that he is dealing with. And yes, he did confirm that it is a bulging disc that he is dealing with and will continue to deal with as the season goes on. Dante Exum, he remains out with his right wrist injury. That gets us to our Mavericks player spotlight on this Wednesday night as the Mavericks visit the Pelicans. And we focus in on the big man for the Dallas Mavericks, and that tonight is going to be Daniel Gafford. Daniel Gafford in his last 9 games, averaging 9.2 points per game, 4.9 rebounds per contest, but shooting just 58.2% from the field in 18 minutes played. Unfortunately, not a lot of energy when it came to the Mavericks, especially on the glass, and Daniel Gafford last night speaking to some of that and why the physicality energy has got to be there going into tonight. Here's what he had to say.
Daniel, do you feel like you brought good physicality on your end?
Not at all. Especially with these last 2 games, not at all.
Why would you say that is?
I really can't put my finger on it, you know. Lack of effort on my end. And I got to be better to be able to bring energy to the team because, you know, that's my job.
Have you felt like there's been an overall lack of energy within the team over these last 2 games?
Sort of, kind of, you know. Just a bit of a rough patch that we're going through. And we're trying to figure it out as the days go by. And, you know, we're a good team to where we try to keep each other motivated, keep each other encouraged. So we're just taking it one day at a time, one game at a time.
Shout out to Noah Weber asking the hard-hitting questions to Daniel Gafford last night during that particular exchange. Tim Cato, you were in the room, obviously, as Daniel Gafford was.
I was not.
Oh, you were not in the room.
I was talking to you guys.
Oh, you were talking to us at that
I
particular
think the
time.
first time.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's sweet, Tim.
Yeah. Then I came back on.
For going Daniel Gafford to talk to us. That was very nice of you. But as you hear that, obviously, the energy not there last night from Gafford. He's going to have to step that up tonight because without Dereck Lively II, that energy, that presence, Gafford has got to bring some of that tonight taking on the Pelicans here.
I think this is a matchup that is poised for a get right game for Daniel Gafford. This is the worst offensive rebounding team in the league, the Pelicans. Or sorry, they allow the most. They allow the most offensive rebounds in the entire NBA by percentage. And there's just a bad defense.
Small
very
team.
small, even smaller without Zion, without Herb Jones. They don't have Brandon Ingram's not out there.
Yeah.
Did we do the injury report?
We just did it. Yeah, we did.
Oh my gosh, sorry. We definitely did. We were talking a lot about that. Return to play protocols.
That's right. Return to
I heard
conditioning.
it, and I something about it I phased out of my brain. Yeah,
I got you, Tim. Don't worry about it. I got you, man. I got you.
Yeah, so like this is a small team, and they already aren't good at doing this. This is like their season-long numbers is that they're the worst offensive rebounding, or they give up the most offensive rebounds. That's so much of what Daniel Gafford thrives on. To me, a successful Daniel Gafford game really starts, especially when Luka's not out there, especially when he doesn't have that pick and roll partner. It starts when Daniel Gafford is grabbing a board, a second one, a third one. And that's just so important to the team. That kind of feeds him. Daniel Gafford said last night that he wasn't giving enough energy. And only he can know that. But he said this a few times. I kind of think that he's, when a player is saying that, and when a player is clearly trying to give energy and feels like they're not doing well, like I have to think that he's trying. And so to some extent, it's just not being channeled in the right ways. He's just a little bit off. The game's not flowing smoothly. He's, popping out, he's going to the wrong side of the rim when the ball bounces to the other one, which, I'm not saying he's Jokic and, is supposed to predict this stuff every time, but it just feels like everything's going wrong for him. The Pelicans are a team where you can do some stuff wrong and it can still go right. And so I really have a lot of eyes on him. And, this is a team that also allows like literally the most shots at the rim in the NBA. This is a team that allows, a lot of those shots to go in. So I would like to see, a hefty double-double from Daniel Gafford. I think it'd be great for him. I think it would be the first step to kind of getting back to where he was last season, getting back to where he wants to be. And, it couldn't come at a better time. He's going to have to step up in Dereck Lively's absence.
And defensively, Misi plays hard, and Yves Misi's a good player. He's a good player. But 231 of his 255 shots have come from within 5 feet of the rim. And so the kind of guys that give Gafford difficulties in these sort of one-on-one matchups, stretch bigs, Ayton isn't a stretch big, but he'll step out to 18 feet, knock down some shots at the free throw line, to where now like your tendency is to protect the rim, but now you got to step out. Now you're overcompensating, and now you're getting cooked. You don't have to do that with Misi. He's 4 of 22 on shots from between 5 to 9 feet. The dude is good around the rim. That's it. 30 of his 231 shots from within 5 feet have been blocked. Gafford should win this matchup pretty lopsidedly. I would hope. If let me reframe this. For the Mavs to win this game, it means Gafford will have won this matchup handily.
He should crack open Yves Misi like a Heineken.
Oh, okay. All
From
right.
Belgium.
Okay.
Ah.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, nice reference.
Although I think Heineken's from the Netherlands.
Because I didn't know where you was going with that for a second there.
Yeah.
I was like, where is going with this? But I got what you're going.
He is a good player.
I'm picking up what you're putting down.
Misi. But
Heineken is Dutch, but that's okay.
Dutch is you're right, that's the Netherlands. Why do the Netherlands get like this totally different I forget the term for it, but like, basically adjective. Like, why are they the Dutch? Why aren't they Netherlandians?
It's also Holland.
They're like Flemish. How do they have so many names?
That country contains multitude. It's
It's
a plural. It's a plural country.
That is your geographical lesson of the day here on the DLLS Mavs.
How many
pregame
countries
show.
are plural?
Is the United States plural?
Let's get to our
United
X
States.
factors
Yeah,
for
it's
tonight's
plural.
game
It's
because,
plural.
my gosh,
There can't be that many though.
the geographical lessons these two are going through right now, we'll have to go through after the show's over with. Let's get to our X factors for tonight's game. Let's start with the homecoming of the night. Najee Marshall makes his homecoming tonight, as of course he's playing his first game back in New Orleans after spending his first 4 seasons of his career there. Marshall so far this year averaging 11.1 points per game, shooting nearly 51% from the field. The first time he took on the Pelicans at the AAC in that 132-91 blowout, he had a really nice game that night, 15 points, 3 assists, and 3 steals as well. Bobby, Najee Marshall looking to have a good game tonight, and he will need to, as he is in the starting lineup for the Dallas Mavericks tonight.
Yeah, and I mean, we've talked about it. Ever since he came back from whatever ailment sidelined him for such a long time, he's kind of struggled. He's scored okay, but his jump shooting is way down, and his defense has been like sort of lacking impact, I would say. Tonight, he's going to be guarding Trey Murphy a lot. Trey Murphy is really freaking good. The benefit that Najee has, even if he's not sort of like physically and mentally there on second night of a back-to-back and all this stuff, he knows all Trey Murphy's moves. He's really familiar with all these guys. So, like, I don't think he's going to get fooled by Jose Alvarado. I don't think he's going to be surprised by anything Trey Murphy does. I think he knows, a lot of their sets, a lot of their goals, things that they want to do.
He's not going to get ripped when Alvarado hides behind Jason Kidd.
I would hope not.
That would be pretty
I would hope
dude.
not.
You just played with him.
And Alvarado's going to try because they're buddies. Like they're
Right.
they're really good friends. So hopefully if nothing else, the sense of familiarity, the sense of all that stuff will be a little comforting for him, and he can just go out and play basketball.
You know how sometimes football teams do the fake kickoff, where a player wearing the same color jersey as the end zone will like lay down in it. You guys have seen that, right?
I've seen that before. Yeah.
When they did the NBA Cup courts, one of the teams should have tried that. Just lay down on the court.
Try to blend in.
Yeah. These courts are like the brightest shade of blue possible. Your City Edition jersey that year is a shade that is exactly matches the court. You lay down and then you see if you can like run up and tip it out of there. I think it's worth trying.
It might be worth trying.
Yeah.
By the way, to your point, Bobby, Trey Murphy in his last 7 games, Trey Murphy the third, averaging nearly 27 points per game, shooting 36% from 3 in his last 7 games. So he's been playing.
That's a guy where every time he shoots it, I think it's going in.
Same.
He has such a pretty jump shot.
Yeah. Trey Murphy, good player for the Pelicans. Let's get to
one super quick thing about Najee. I thought 2 nights ago against Denver, the first game against Denver, I thought he looked much more confident with the shot. That I think he had one where he kind of stepped back and the foot was on the line, but he was at least taking those shots in a way that, honestly, like that's the difference between him and Derek Jones of yesteryear, is that when he feels good about a shot, like he will kind of seek it out sometimes. And I'd love to see him consistently get back into that groove, even if he's not shooting 40%, just being somebody who's like, oh, I can make a shot and I'm going to go make a shot.
Tonight would be a good night for Najee Marshall to do so, and hopefully he gets some help from a guy in P.J. Washington who needs to get back on track for Dallas. In his last couple of games, he's combined to score 13 points in the 2 losses against the Denver Nuggets. In the prior 2 games against the Blazers and the Lakers, combined to score 45 points in those 2 games. He went just 2 of 10 last night in 26 minutes of play against the Denver Nuggets. P.J. Washington got to get back to some good play to be able to help out this Mavericks offense tonight. That gets us to our final X factor of tonight's game. Bobby, you'll appreciate this one. Who's going to bring the juice offensively? Because the Mavericks are going to need it, obviously, without Dereck Lively, without Kyrie Irving, Quentin Grimes, Jaden Hardy, Klay Thompson. Somebody's going to have to bring the juice. Interesting statistic as we dive into this one real quick. Mavericks have had a different leading scorer in each of their last 5 games so far, or at least in their last 5 games, I should say. And they, unfortunately, the Mavericks had the 6th worst overall net rating since Christmas Day. So somebody got to bring the juice offensively tonight.
Yeah, sometimes having a different score 5 games in a row is a good thing, and sometimes it's the reality that we're living in.
It's definitely the latter right now.
Yeah, I mean, they need multiple guys to have it going. Like, who was their leading scorer last night? Was it Gafford? He had like 12?
13.
Gafford with 13, yeah.
No player outside of Jamal Murray scored more than 13 points last night.
Yeah.
That won't do it.
I mean, the reality is, look, they got to win 95-90. Like, that's what it's going to be. If the Pelicans get to 100, the Mavs will probably lose. So, honestly, the offense is immaterial. If you don't get stops, you're not winning. So just focus on defense. Just focus on defense and play hard. That's all I ask. Just play. I saw Soren comment that earlier too. Just play hard. If they play hard, win or lose, I'll at least be happy. What we saw last night was not playing hard.
Yeah.
There's nothing to be proud of. Be better.
energy and effort needed tonight to take on the New Orleans Pelicans. We'll be back 15 minutes after the game is over with here on the DLLS Mavs postgame show. We'll also be joined by our national NBA insider, Mark Stein. He'll provide his thoughts and perspective on tonight's game as well. Really appreciate all of you joining us here for the DLLS Mavs pregame show. That's our Mavericks analyst, Bobby Curl. That's our Mavericks beat writer, Tim Cato. I'm your host, Kevin Gray. We'll talk to you 15 minutes after the game between the Mavericks and the Pelicans right here on DLLS Sports. Y'all be good. Peace.
We all silly like the mayor.